Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, written by Charles Schulz. This is actually the third original Peanuts animated special. The first one, of course, is A Charlie Brown Christmas, that debuted back in 1965. The second one it's called Charlie Brown's All-Stars. I don't believe I've ever seen that one. Apparently it's a baseball one. And then the third one is this one. It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. This one's more about Linus and him believing in the Great Pumpkin, which a lot of the characters, they equate to Santa Claus, because he talks about the Great Pumpkin bringing him toys and the fact that he believes in this mystical creature, even though he's never seen it before. And I feel like all the details that Linus comes up with, it's all in his own imagination, because really all of them, they're kids. They have this innocence to them, this wide-eyed naivety. How do you pronounce that? Anyway, this is a cute special. Not my favorite of the Peanuts specials, but my favorite is the original one, the Charlie Brown Christmas. But this one's really cute. It opens with Linus and Lucy, and it's the song Linus and Lucy, and that's an excellent classic song by the brilliant Vince Guaraldi. And they're going to pick out a pumpkin. Lucy makes Linus pick out the biggest one, and then she goes to carve it, and then Linus says, "You didn't tell me you were gonna kill it." Poor Linus. And so then we get some fall shenanigans with Charlie Brown raking the leaves. There's a giant pile of leaves, and then you just see Snoopy bring one leaf to the pile, like blow one leaf on top of it. Like that's him helping. But then Linus dives into the pile, and he just pops back up, and he's got his lollipop, and it's covered in leaves, and he just says, "Never jump into a pile of leaves with a wet sucker." And of course, Charlie Brown and just the Peanuts in general, it's so seminal, so far-reaching in terms of the influence it's had on entertainment and on animation, with the characters and the storytelling in general. And then, of course, you get, in this special, you get the classic Charlie Brown versus Lucy with the football. And Charles Schulz, in the original Peanuts comic strip, he never once ever let Charlie Brown kick that football. He once said that, "I couldn't have Charlie Brown kick that football. That would be a terrible disservice to him after nearly half a century." And then later in an interview from December 1999, he said, "All of a sudden I thought, that poor kid, he never even got to kick the football. What a dirty trick. He never had a chance to kick the football." But that's just because Charlie Brown really is the ultimate underdog, the poor kid. Everyone's so mean to him. Poor Charlie Brown. Not everyone. I should say really Lucy's really mean, but she's mean to everyone. Lucy's a great character, though, because even though she's a bully, she's extremely confident. She's also really smart. And you can see she's definitely like the original. Like, I see the influence of her in other classic cartoon characters that I grew up with. She's the original Angelica Pickles, the original Helga G. Pataki, with that sass and that overbearing nature. But anyway, back to the Halloween special. She gives Charlie Brown the old shtick, saying, "I won't pull the football away this time." And she even goes as far to say, "Here's a signed document testifying that I promise not to pull it away." And Charlie Brown's impressed, and he thinks, like, as he's walking away, he says, "I guess if you have a signed document in your possession, you can't go wrong." So he runs back, tries to kick the football, and the same thing happens. She lifts it, he goes screaming, lands on his back, and then she just says, "Peculiar thing about this document, it was never notarized." She's good, you gotta hand it to her. And so then, in the next scene, Linus is writing to the Great Pumpkin. And it's basically like writing a letter to Santa Claus. So this is Linus's letter. He writes, "Dear Great Pumpkin, I'm looking forward to your arrival on Halloween night. I hope you will bring me lots of presents. You must get discouraged because more people believe in Santa Claus than in you. Well, let's face it, Santa Claus has had more publicity. But being number 2, perhaps you try harder. Everyone tells me you are a fake, but I believe in you. P.S. If you really are a fake, don't tell me. I don't want to know. It's just so sweet how he wants to maintain that childlike innocence, and he doesn't want to be crushed even if it's the truth that the Great Pumpkin isn't real. But as he's writing that letter, he keeps getting interrupted. He gets interrupted by Charlie Brown, who comes over and he says, "You must be crazy. When are you going to stop believing in something that isn't true?" And Linus comes back with, "When you stop believing in that fellow with the red suit and the white beard who goes ho, ho, ho." And then Charlie Brown says, "We are obviously separated by denominational differences." I mean, these kids have vast vocabulary, I have to say. And then Snoopy comes by and he's just laughing his head off. And then Lucy comes by and she tells him to stop because all everyone talks about is that how her brother writes to the Great Pumpkin. And she says, "You better stop or I'll pound you." Relax, Lucy, goodness. But then Sally comes by and she's got her little hearts dancing over her head, her little crush on Linus, so she's willing to believe him just because she loves Linus. And then a random sight gag that I really like, Lucy's holding up a TV guide, and there's a picture of her on the TV guide. That's just cute. But then Linus goes to mail the letter, and Lucy asks him, "Well, how are you going to mail it? I'm not going to help you." But then Linus, in his innovation, he just takes his security blanket, snaps open the mailbox, and he lets go of the letter, and it just gently floats in the mailbox. It's just a very cute moment. And by the way, the term security blanket was in fact popularized by the Peanuts comic strip. The concept of a security object, that was already in existence beforehand, but that actual term, security blanket, that's from Charles Schulz with Linus, so that's pretty cool. So after Linus mails his letter, then Charlie Brown walks up and he's all excited because he got invited to a Halloween party, and he said it's the first party he's ever been invited to. But then Lucy quickly squashes all his happiness by saying it was clearly a mistake. I mean, poor Charlie Brown, that kid can never catch a break. But then they're getting ready to go trick-or-treating, and this is an excellent moment. Lucy says, "A person should always choose a costume which is in direct contrast to her own personality." And then she just puts on a witch mask, and there's just a beat, and that's it. It's excellent. But then the kids are gonna be going trick-or-treating, and before that, they show off their costumes, and everyone's like wearing a ghost costume or something very simple. I guess probably thinking about that, it's probably because it was easier to animate, but still, it's just, or also because it's easy for a kid to just cut some holes in some sheets, and that's it, throw it on, and there's a costume. And yet I say that, you would think it's easy for kids, but then there's Charlie Brown, the poor kid, he didn't know how to work the scissors, he got a bit too many holes in his ghost costume. And before they leave, Sally asks about trick-or-treating and how it works, and they explain to her, you ring the doorbell, you say trick-or-treat, you get a piece of candy. And she asks, "Are you sure it's legal?" And by the way, isn't Sally around 6 or so, and she doesn't know about trick-or-treating, and this is her first time trick-or-treating? For me personally, I was trick-or-treating the first thing I can remember. I don't know, just saying. I think that's a little old to not having experienced trick-or-treating. But regardless, they go to the pumpkin patch, and Linus is out there, and Sally is torn between going trick-or-treating for the first time or hanging back with Linus to sit around and wait for the Great Pumpkin. And she decides to stay with him even though she's very skeptical about it. And Linus is just so flabbergasted by this, and he says, "I thought little girls always believed everything that was told to them. I thought little girls were innocent and trusting." And Sally says, "Welcome to the 20th century." But so then the other kids leave, and so Sally and Linus are just sitting by themselves in the Great Pumpkin Patch. And Sally just says out of nowhere, "If you try to hold my hand, I'll slug you," which is so adorable. I love it. And that line in particular, it just reminded me so much of Helga Pataki from Hey Arnold, because that brash side, but really deep down, she's a softie. And of course, talking to her crush, Sally talking to Linus, and Helga talking to Arnold, because I remember in an episode of Hey Arnold, I can't recall the actual episode off the top of my head, but I remember the moment. They're at a dance or something, and Helga just says to Arnold, You better not ask me to dance, football head. It just reminded me of that. Anyway, back to Charlie Brown. The kids are trick-or-treating, and there's a montage of the kids getting candy and Charlie Brown each time getting a rock. That is just so cruel. And what's weird is every single adult happens to have a rock sitting by. Is the idea, if there's a kid with a terrible costume, they're getting a rock, they don't deserve candy. I mean, I get it. It's really hammering home that Charlie Brown's an underdog, that he doesn't really get much good luck, he doesn't have good fortune. So I know it's funny and everything, but just pausing to think about that for a second, that's so bizarre. You give a kid a rock? I mean, come on, give the kid something. Give him at least an apple, something nutritious, not a rock. What's the kid gonna do with that? So it's just something silly and funny. But as they're trick-or-treating, Snoopy, I didn't really mention Snoopy much yet. He's off doing his own thing. He's pretending he's a flying ace and he's trying to take down the Red Baron. And that scene's fun, but it's not as interesting to me. It's just a sequence with him pretending he's flying using his little doggy house. And it's cute, but I mean, in this special, there's no Woodstock. His little birdie friend. Snoopy's gotta have Woodstock, so maybe that's what's missing with that. And then after the kids are done trick-or-treating, they go to Violet's Halloween party. And then there's a hilarious moment where the girls are like, Charlie Brown, you have to model for us. And he's so flattered. And they have him sit down, but then they turn his head around and they just draw a jack-o'-lantern face. So they just use his head to plan out the jack-o'-lantern. Poor Charlie Brown. I'm laughing at his misery. I'm sorry, Charlie Brown, but that's just really funny. And then later on, they're bobbing for apples, and there's an amazing line where Lucy says, I'll show everyone how you do it, and then one of the girls says, yeah, Lucy, you should be good at this. You have the perfect mouth for it. Excellent response. But then Lucy bobs for the apple, and Snoopy pops up, and then she just freaks out and says, my lips touch dog lips. And then after that, there's a sequence with Schroeder. He doesn't say anything in this special, but he, the kid who plays the piano, he's playing a medley of World War I songs, and Snoopy's just dancing along, and it's sweet, too. And then we cut back to the pumpkin patch again, and Linus, finally, he hears something, and he starts freaking out. He says, what's that? I hear the great pumpkin. And there's a cute animation thing where his hair stands up. I just like little things like that, little animation gags. Especially in something like this, where it's really more about the storytelling. Because Peanuts is more, when you think of Peanuts, you don't really think of, say, slapstick type stuff. That's really more Looney Tunes. But with this, you think more of the themes of, one of them really is the theme of unrequited love, because you got Sally who likes Linus. I'm pretty sure, I think Lucy secretly likes Charlie Brown. I don't think I made that up. But in the series, in these specials, she likes Schroeder, but he just doesn't care for her at all. So you really just have that theme of kids being kids, the relatability of growing up. Even though obviously these specials were in the 60s. This one specifically was originally premiered in 1966, but they are timeless. They're well written. They're sweet in their simplicity, in terms of you don't need all these big flashy things. It's just focused on the kids. There's the classic gag with the adults with that trombone noise. You never see any adults in this. That just makes it more unique to this world. But anyway, Linus thinks he sees the great pumpkin and he faints, but it just turns out to be Snoopy. And then he wakes up and he asks, what happened? Did I faint? Did he leave us any toys? And Sally just goes off. She just starts screaming, saying it's all his fault. She missed trick-or-treating. Actually, she says tricks or treats. And that's just a random nitpick I have. It's trick-or-treating, Sally. Come on. But I guess she's too young. She doesn't really know. But then she goes off. She says, you blockhead. What a fool I was. You owe me restitution. Gotta love their vocabulary. Just have to say that again. Commendable. Smart kids. And then Charlie Brown walks up and Linus asks him, "You've heard about Fury of a Woman's Scorn, haven't you?" And Charlie Brown says, "Yes, I believe I've heard that." And Linus says, "That's nothing compared to the fury of a woman who's been cheated out of tricks or treats." But then they all leave him again, and he's so desperate to see the Great Pumpkin. He says, "If the Great Pumpkin comes back, I'll still put in a good word for you." And then he just says, "Good grief," and his hair sticks up again all wildly. And he says, "I said if, I meant when he comes. I'm doomed." He's losing his belief. He's losing his faith in the Great Pumpkin. Poor Linus. He's in a crisis. But then everyone goes to sleep, and then Lucy randomly wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and she looks in Linus's bedroom to see that it's empty. So this is a nice Lucy-Linus brother-sister moment. Really a nice Lucy moment, because with how mean and cruel she is, at least she cares about her little brother. She goes out, she brings him back in, and he's just sitting there. He's lying down, shivering with his blanket. Poor little Linus. She brings him in, she covers him up, and again, Linus and Lucy is playing that classic piano song. I remember I used to be able to play it, at least the beginning of it. I gotta relearn that, because it's such a classic piece. It's a feel-good, amazing piece. Puts a smile on my face. I love it. But I digress. And then the last scene is the classic, true to Charlie Brown form of Charlie Brown and Linus sitting by the brick wall, lamenting their woes with one another. And Charlie Brown's going on saying, "I don't understand. I went trick-or-treating and all I got was a bag full of rocks." And Linus is talking about how he stayed up waiting for the Great Pumpkin who never came, and he doesn't understand why, because his pumpkin patch was the most sincere. And Charlie Brown just tells him, "Well, it's okay, Linus. I've done a lot of stupid stuff too." And then Linus just snaps, saying, "Stupid? What do you mean stupid? Just wait till next year, Charlie Brown. I'll find a pumpkin patch that's real sincere." And he's just going on and on as the credits roll. So to me, that's something to be admired, that he still believes, and part of it is because he's a child, but it's sweet that he maintains that innocence, that belief, that faith. And he is stubborn about it, because he literally is the only one who believes in the Great Pumpkin, but that doesn't stop him. So overall, it's a cute Halloween special. It's one of those Peanuts specials that I watch each year when they're on. This is one of them. Another is the Christmas one. I love also the Valentine's one, the Thanksgiving one. And you gotta love Peanuts for its place in pop culture, in entertainment, in storytelling, and all of these other works of fiction that it has influenced throughout the years. And with that, that's going to conclude this episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving a message in the contact section at storytellingsaga.com, or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, why was there bacon in the soap? I made it myself. Tune in as I discuss Invader Zim. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.